we're on. Happy days. I feel like I've now inadvertently starting all these episodes with happy days or some sort of, are we on? Like tapping. Hello?
Like the old woman, like if you're trying to zoom your grandma.
That's
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, and you're just looking at you're looking at the inside of her ear where she.
Yeah, it's just her face is just there. Yeah.
So we're back with episode 5. I feel like the episode thing is now stuck enough that I haven't got to mention it now. This is episode 5.
Yeah.
Go with that because I didn't find a better one. Obviously back with Charlie from CB Nutrition because he is a firm fan favourite, and I still haven't quite recovered from the fact that I cheated on him with James all those episodes back.
Normally.
So I owe him at least another episode before I cheat on him again. So there's a thing.
And the cost of therapy as well.
And some therapy, yeah, that's the thing as well. We're working on that. We'll get through this together. I feel like we'll come out of this stronger on the other side, mate.
Okay.
Cool. And also, we've had a few questions through nutrition and that kind of thing, and there is a fairly large thing in the industry in that gyms are allowed to reopen from next Tuesday, the 2nd. I think that's next Tuesday. Anyway, the 2nd, we're allowed to reopen. Maybe the 3rd. I think it's the 2nd. I just probably got my facts right before I started that. Anyways, gyms are reopening in the UK, which is really, really cool. So obviously we've had a few questions through kind of return to training and that kind of thing. So as kind of usual method, I believe let's get you first. I think you had a really good question to start with. So we've got 2 kind of really good questions we can delve into, and then a couple of really sort of quick wrap-ups at the end.
Yeah, cool. You put me on the spot now. I've got to try and remember my question. It was related to, should I be trying to lose body fat over lockdown? I want to, but I'm really stressed. I've got loads of stress at work, loads of like family stress, obviously the stress of the current situation, etc. Is now a good time to be looking to lose body fat? And I guess the answer isn't a blanket yes or no. Funnily enough, it depends. I think we've said that on here before. And it comes down to a lot of different things, and there are so many different like physiological and psychological factors we could dive into here. So a couple of things I want to touch on. In psychology, there's this thing called behavioural potential, and it's basically like the likelihood of you being able to do a behaviour at a given time where you're at right now. So like with your current life situation, so if you looked at what your motivations are like, what your habits are like, your like resources, which basically means like how you're coping with things and how you do cope with things. And then like loads of context like your environment, cues, opportunities you've got, etc. How likely are you to do a behaviour? Now, obviously, if you're not currently losing weight and you want to lose weight, that's a change in behaviour. So what we're basically looking at is how able are you right now to be able to change your behaviour. If you've got loads of different things going on and loads of other stresses, trying to focus on something else, your behavioural potential is probably quite low. Like the ability for you to stick to a new behaviour isn't that high, really. I can't remember if we spoke about this before, but in nutrition, there's quite a common behaviour change model called the COM-B model. So B is for behaviour, and the COM is capability, opportunity, and motivation. And the idea is that you need all 3 of those to change behaviour. So you can be really motivated, but if you haven't got the capability or the opportunity to change behaviour, you won't change it. Now, capability comes with physical and psychological capability. So if you haven't got the psychological capability because you've got so much other stuff going on, you're not going to be able to change behaviour because you're not capable of changing your behaviour. Same way that if you're not motivated to do something, I'm not motivated to start running a marathon, so I'm not going to change my running behaviour because I don't want to. You need all 3 of those things to change behaviour, and if you've not got the capability, then the chance of you successfully changing behaviour aren't that high. And then the last thing really is sort of self-regulation. So I don't know if you've come across like the idea of ego depletion. It's kind of like the willpower idea that willpower is a finite resource and we only have so much, and then it's like a muscle, it gets fatigued, and then we stop being able to regulate our decisions, control our decisions. Whether that's true or not, there's loads of different research, probably isn't quite how we think it is, but basically the effort to... I
was going to say, I don't think it's as cut and shut as that.
No, pretty much no. I think it's just that's a really shiny, simple way to explain something. And so everyone's just grabbed hold of it and gone, yeah, that is true, that's how it works.
Gospel.
Yeah, literally. But like to self-regulate a behaviour, effort, as motivation goes, so like I said, that behavioural potential, motivation might be really high, you might have quite high behavioural potential. As that goes, you need more self-regulation, self-control to change a behaviour, because motivation's gone. So if you had a really high behaviour potential and then motivation goes, that goes down, you need therefore more self-regulation to bring that behaviour potential up to increase the chance of you changing the behaviour. And in suboptimal conditions and everything else, so loads of other stresses and things, chances of you having that and being able to regulate really highly aren't there. So that's a very long-winded way of saying probably best not to try and diet during a really stressful period. Some people have naturally higher self-regulation and are able to regulate despite other things going on. And that's why I said it might not be a good idea. For some people, it could be a good idea, or at least they could do it. But for the majority of people, I suggest it probably isn't the best idea for those reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I'd mirror exactly that. I thought about this when you mentioned it the other day, and I can't really see many like pluses or sort of pros to this. Depends on the individual. I think we tapped on the other day, sort of individuals' capability to cope with stuff. And this is one of those things, if you're already stressed out, which I don't know many people that aren't, with the whole lockdown COVID scenario, can't see people, various rules and things going on. No one really knows what the next turn is. To then add pressure to yourself in terms of cutting fat, cutting weight, whatever way you want to spin it, whatever you're trying to do, that is a grim task to set foot on in the first place. So if you're trying to do that as a way to get through things, then you're a very unique individual. If your coping mechanism is to lose body weight or lose fat, man, like that's quite an impressive skill. Yeah. My coping mechanism is to smash down chocolate. But, and
we'll discuss why Charlie's coping mechanisms are equally unhealthy in a different episode.
Correct. That's episode 6. But again, it kind of depends. There's that. It depends. Again, depends on the individual. But I think by and large, probably not a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I agree. And there's the physical thing of if you've got no training stimulus because you're not training, which a lot of people aren't or don't have much of one. Muscle retention at a deficit's harder if the stimulus isn't there. Like it's possible, but it's probably more difficult. So there's just no real reason. I'll share a win for a client this week actually, who really sadly one of her colleagues passed away because of coronavirus in the week. And in her check-in, she was like, I just haven't, like, there's a bit where it says, how would you rate your body composition progress this week? She said, I haven't thought about it. And for me, that was such a big win because it's just not a priority for a lot of people right now and probably shouldn't be. That doesn't mean you don't focus on your nutrition and get your nutrition right, but it just means like we're not checking in the mirror, we don't have to worry about the scales, like things like that just aren't necessarily always a concern, and they shouldn't always be on your mind. And having weeks where you just just completely forgot that was a thing is like bloody brilliant for most people.
That is that's a really good anecdotal model of the thing actually. So there are massive things at play at the minute that far outweigh that kind of minutia. It's really in the grand scheme of things not that important. Great shout, I like that. Cool, man. So I feel like that wrapped up quite nicely. So the next question I had, and I can't remember who asked me this, so I apologise, I'm not name dropping this person, but they put what should my training look like when gyms reopen, which I thought was a really interesting question. So when gyms reopen, obviously we've been shut for a month. Sort of prior to this, so the last lockdown, we were shut for significantly longer. It's an interesting question in the sense of what should your training look like, and it get ready for it. It depends. It completely depends on what you were training for in the first place. So I think if we stick to the veins of who's listening to this and watching this and stuff, I think if we stick in strength sports, I don't think it should look much different to what it did before lockdown. Obviously, that said, it's probably going to look a lot lighter, at least initially. So we've harped on about it on this podcast before. You know, your strength will disappear when you don't train for a while. It just will. It's a kind of take it or use it or lose it principle in that respect. But the skill stays quite high, and if you're able to keep the skill high, then awesome, you're good. Strength will come back pretty quick. You know, sort of a good 4 to 6 weeks of really sort of back to focus training. You'll be straight back to where you were after a decent period of time off. Obviously, we only had a month off, and whilst it's a month, it's still only a month. It's still 4 weeks. So there's not an awful lot of atrophy you're going to experience in a month. You'll feel weaker mentally. You'll go back to the gym and you're going to feel like hell. You know, you'll go to pick up the 16 kilo dumbbells and they'll feel like the 20s, but that's because you haven't picked them up for a month. So you've kind of forgotten what they feel like and what that weight feels like in your body. But in terms of what your training should look like, I don't think it should look anything different. But then it depends on what you're training for. So if you're training for competitions, let's say you're training for strongman comps. There's a few of those dotting around at the minute because they're easy to get outside. So strongman competitions are things that are running currently. And for those, you've just got to be strong. It depends on where you were before your training. If your comp's coming up soon, then focus on the skills and the events. So you might want to be doing Atlas stone training, yoke runs, farmers, grip training, that sort of stuff. If you've got one away, then maybe work on some sort of strength program, maybe a little bit of hypertrophy, something like that. But it depends on where you're at in your training cycle. But and again, I think that's the third time I've answered it with this line, is it depends on where you were at before, but I don't think it should look any different, just a little bit lighter. I don't know. Would you agree, or what's your thought on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, you're the training guy, so I'm going to go with you.
Sure.
But no, yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's really tempting for people to trash themselves, like when they come back in. Like you said, if it's about skill and then strength will come back eventually, if you want to keep skill high, you need to be repeating the skill a lot. And so you want to get yourself in the gym as much as possible. If you trash yourself in the first couple of sessions, trying to do exactly the same load and things that you were before, you're going to write yourself off for the rest of the week. And that limits how many times you'll actually be able to go and perform the skill, be in the gym, or even if you go to the gym, perform well. So yeah, just like ease yourself back in and you give yourself the best chance of performing the skill more times, which will bring strength back quicker and you'll feel better for it. Like muscle soreness in general, I know this isn't the question, but is way down on the list of things that are important to seek from a training session.
Yeah.
Like it's just not a consideration. It probably is a consideration, and that we try and limit it because it's not like we don't seek muscle soreness. It's not a marker of how well you've trained. Like I'd put enjoyment and interest in the session ahead of soreness.
100%.
Because if you enjoy the session, you work harder anyway. You end up getting more adaptation. Full stop. So yeah, just don't write yourself off in the first week for me.
Yeah, pretty much that. I mean, it's sort of two things that I say to people is don't chase pain, because if you feel like you must bury yourself into the floor for your workout to experience DOMs for the next month, you're probably missing the point of that session. But yeah, so don't chase pain is a thing. But I think the biggest sort of takeaway from it, when you get back into the gym from the second, is check your ego. Like you should do that anyway. Don't bring your ego into the gym. Ego has no place in the gym. Save that for competition. Then you can be an egotistical wanker because you're setting out to win. But in the gym, check your ego. Leave that behind because it's going to take a bruise. If you go in and you expect to, if you were deadlifting 200 kilo for 5 before lockdown and you go back in and think, I can deadlift 200 for 5, you might be disappointed and your ego is going to take a big old hit. So leave your ego behind. Set yourself in saying, well, I could do this a month ago. Let's see where I'm at today. And I'm not saying go in and test your 5 rep max straight away. Like ease yourself back through and then give yourself a month of consistent training and then retest your maxes. And you might be surprised. You might have got stronger, but don't be surprised if you got a little bit weaker. So again, I think this goes back to the soft skills that we talk about a lot. Is just be nice to yourself. Don't be a dick. Lower your expectations, and then everything else is a bonus.
Yeah, I think at the moment, if you're asking, what should I do after a month off training? If you don't do it properly, you'll be asking us in a couple of weeks, what do I do with 4 months off training? Because you've injured something, because you've been an arsehole about it. Yeah. So if you look after yourself now, you look after yourself in the long run as well.
You'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. So yeah, that's, again, we could delve into many rabbit holes on this question, but that's, I think, as a sort of nutshell, just go back in, work on your skills, start light, build up, see how you feel. It's very subjective. I can't say to you, if you were lifting 200 for 5 deadlifts, you should go back in at 170 for 5. I can't, there's no cut and shut. It's very dependent on the individual, and it's a very subjective question to ask. But yeah, go in light, see how you feel. That's kind of it, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Smashing. Cool, man. So I'm gonna power in with another question because I'd really like to finish on your question last, because I feel that's going to be. I think that's going to be good. So I'm going to go back to back questions because I can. My podcast. So this is a mate of mine, Pete, has asked about nutrition for power production. Now, Pete is a cyclist. He's a very good cyclist. He's a competitive guy. He's the dude that you try and aim your car out on the road. He's that guy. Don't do that. It's a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. But Pete's that guy. And I'm saying this because Pete's my mate. If it was someone else that messed in as a cyclist, awesome, go you. But if you see Pete, try and hit him. It's funny. He's also quite quick, so there's a thing. But he's decided to leave cycling alone for a little bit because he saw the light and he's coming over to strength sports, which is great. And I think he said he was training for a powerlifting meet, which is awesome. Now, obviously, from competitive cyclists smashing out 100-mile days, hammering down cinnamon buns and coffee and Greg's every other day and all that kind of good stuff just to keep calories in for his 100-mile cycles, to all of a sudden switch into a very different sport with a completely different calorie need. The question, is there any food that can help power production? I don't think is the right question. But what I think he's asking is, can I take anything that's going to help my training? And in that, I'd probably just blanket that as kind of carbs and creatine to help with kind of power production off the back of the sport he's been doing. I mean, this is very much your question to answer than mine. But mine is carbs and creatine. I don't think there's anyone that's going to really help power production, but I think they're certainly going to help fuel your training for power.
Yeah, I agree. Carbs, creatine, caffeine are the 3 C's that are important for powerlifting. I guess the other thing, because I mean, we spoke about this off camera, but I didn't realise Pete's background in terms of cycling. The amount of muscle mass you have is really, really closely correlated to your performance in the 3 power lifts. And there's a couple of different papers that have shown this, like really high, so like 0.85, 0.9 sort of correlation, really, really high correlation. So I guess the question then becomes, how do I put more muscle mass on rather than how do I produce more power? Because if you've got more muscle mass, then you're probably going to do better in your lifts.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to, again, fueling training properly with carbohydrates, caffeine probably, creatine, and then protein sufficient total amount and also spaced out throughout the day. They're going to be the biggest things for you in terms of a powerlifter for nutrition to improve your performance.
Cool. That.
Yes.
Done. So yeah, that was kind of mirrored my thoughts on it. So I'm glad to confirm that because that's what I told him. Yeah. But yeah, so and again, it's quite an interesting point of transitioning from sports, or going from effectively, sort of high power endurance, which affects
very different sports. Yeah, because power is quite important in that. Like powered weight for cycling is their big thing.
Yeah,
you'll see people like shaving bits off their bike and stuff. I mean, most of it's like middle-aged men in Lycra who are like 5 kilos overweight, tinkering with the bike to reduce the weight on it.
That's the one.
And then like shoveling pies down. But yeah, power to weight's really important in that. But in powerlifting, it's about gains.
Yeah, 100%. Just shift weight. But yeah, I mean, Pete. Oh, I don't know. I'm going to say nice things about him on this, and that's not nice. I don't like it. Yeah, Pete is obviously a competitive cyclist. He's a very good cyclist. Won a lot of races, done all those bits and pieces. So coming across to this, he's got that sort of competitive nature about him. But coming from that competitive cycling background of his, he's just got legs for days. So in terms of power he can push through his legs, he's already got that kind of there. So in terms of a kind of store of muscle mass that he's already got, it's kind of there. So I feel like him coming across the powerlifting is a very different scenario from someone completely untrained. But I feel like the principles of nutrition are still going to be the same. You're still going to want to put that size on, like you said. You're still going to want to have that kind of muscle growth to then fine tune that for one-off power later on.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most nutrition's the same, really. It's just adjusting the fuel that you need. That'd be the main difference, is how much fuel you need for cycling compared to powerlifting.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot less, to be honest.
But yeah.
Other than that, the principles stay pretty much the same.
Cool. Well, yeah, so that was, again, another sort of quick wrap up. I like it.
Yeah.
And then, so last question was yours, which is a great question. One of my favourite topics.
Yeah, so someone said to me, a PT that I follow shared something about sugar addiction and like, can we be addicted to sugar? They said something about dopamine. So I just sort of wanted your opinion on that.
So I don't think you can be addicted to sugar. I don't know. I don't think you can. I'm pretty sure you can't, as a fact of fact. But from what I know about addiction, which I'll caveat off the bat, isn't an awful lot. I'm not an addiction specialist or anything like that. But I do know that sugar tastes good, and it makes things taste good, and it makes you feel good. So in terms of an addiction, I don't know when the last time someone tried to steal money from the nan's purse to buy a bag of Tate and Lyle was. But I do know that people would steal from the nan's purse to buy heroin, which is quite addictive, so I've been told.
Yeah. Very Moorish heroin.
Huh?
Very Moorish.
Very Moorish.
Oh, I've heard it described.
Amazing.
You have a little bit. Yeah.
No, just go a bit more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've heard. It's not a supplement I've dabbled in, but not one I ever intend to either. I'm just going to throw that one out there. But yeah, Moorish is a great way of putting it. Now, in terms of sugar addiction, I feel like people just kind of go to it because it tastes good and it's usually quite easy to get hold of. And it makes you feel good because you get that kind of sugar rush. It makes you feel a little bit buzzy for a minute. So I feel like, without shitting on this topic from a great height, there is probably a low-level correlation, which I'm going to go through. Very, very low level, which is almost not there because it's not there. Sugar's not addictive. But I just think it makes people enjoy it. It's a nice thing to eat. And in terms of, you mentioned dopamine. Dopamine is the same hormone that's released when you work out. It's right up there with serotonin and that kind of thing. And it's just a dump into your brain that makes you feel good. So I don't know anyone that's necessarily addicted to working out, but it's clear to see you want to get that enjoyment back from working out and that dump of dopamine and serotonin. So yeah, I feel like that's the same bracket.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and we know that dopamine's released in anticipation of things. So when you're looking forward to something, you'll release dopamine.
Yeah.
And I say to our fair, like the example, I look forward to seeing my grandma.
Yeah.
I'm not addicted to my grandmother. I'm very, very fond of Big Claire, but not addicted to her.
Go on, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of interest in addiction research in terms of sugar, which shows it's not addictive. So this sort of dopaminergic response that they've shown, where they said, oh, this is the same as cocaine. Well, so cocaine dopamine response was the same as a food reward response. So like I said, that anticipation, like you said, that pleasure, that's when that's when dopamine's released. The interesting thing is when they found that is that they restricted the access of rats, also rats, not people, rats. For the rat following to this podcast, you might be addicted to it.
Scientific rats.
Yeah. But that happened when they restricted access to sugar and then provided it. So they'd have like 16 hours without sugar, 8 hours where they said, there you go, there's a sugar, crack on. And obviously we don't have that. We have access to sugar all of the time. So there's two important points to this. One is that we have access to sugar all the time, ad libitum. But then the other thing is that we don't always, because we don't let ourselves. And we've come on this before, in that cravings happen when you stop yourself from having the thing. So when you stop the access to sugar, like they did with the rats crave sugar. When you stop yourself access to things, you crave the thing. If you allow yourself 24-hour access to sugar, you don't get the same response. You don't get that addictive response.
Yeah.
So again, it's another point to actually just give yourself permission to eat things. You probably won't crave the things. And then there was a few other nice points that sort of they talked about in terms of the sugar research. Sugar cravings go eventually, like all food cravings sort of ebb and flow. It's not like a exponential rise of I really want this, now I really, really want this, and then later on I really, really, really want this. Like you'll forget about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen with heroin. It's not like 2 o'clock, it's only heroin time, and then by like 4 o'clock you've forgotten about it. By 4 o'clock you really, really want some heroin if you're addicted to heroin. 6 o'clock you're like,
I love that there might be a heroin time. Like Pim's
it's sort of like
it's crack
in the same time as like meals are cues. The same sort of time of day is your heroin cue. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So that's another clear distinction between drugs and sugar. You made a good point about how it tastes nice.
Yeah.
So that when they removed sugar receptors in rats, so they can't taste sugar, they're not that interested and they don't gain fat. You add fat in, then they overeat on it again. So it just comes down to taste.
Interesting.
So obviously it's not the sugar itself. There's nothing particularly addictive about sugar. It's about taste. And the other interesting one in that they added something that made rats throw up when they had sugar and they stopped eating it. If you do that with addictive drugs, they will carry on and just throw up because drugs are addictive. Sugar isn't addictive, because otherwise you carry on and you see the same response. So yeah, like you said at the start, you're not selling your body on the corner of the street for a bag of Tate Lyle. So you're probably not addicted to sugar.
Good job, really, because let's face it, no one's going to buy this.
No, literally, I'd run out of sugar very quickly.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other podcast entirely. I know the sticker for this podcast is me under a red light, but it's not that sort of podcast.
You should change it to like Red Light Night or something.
Red Light Night.
It'd just be about your prostitution.
Yes, that could be a feature. We could have like sort of like 70s weird porn music playing in the background while I go, "Hey, I'm Charlie Knight." That might work well. We'll look into
Red Light Night.
Red Light Night.
Well, yeah, we can change the colour thing on your.
On my light. Hold on. This is going to be shit for people listening to this on the podcast, but on Spotify, that's the podcast. On YouTube, you'll see my lights changing. So now I look like I've got a tap. I went full influencer wanker for this one, so I've now got a ring light and a microphone, so I should sound better, and I look beautiful, so I've changed the lighting in my room now.
He does.
There's
podcast listeners, he does.
Podcast listeners, go to YouTube, get me some more views, that'd be grand. Shameless plug, that's the thing. So sugar addiction, not a thing. Sugar tastes nice, so you want it, but if you don't have it, you're not going to go and rob your mum, so you'll probably be all right. Also, I don't know the last time I saw. Every now and again I turn Dutch on this podcast. I don't know what happens. I don't know the last time I saw the sugar dealer on the corner of the street.
No. Selling
little grand bags of sugar. Post office sells them. You know, little London's at the corner of me. He's got a post office. Yep. They sell sugar, but you know, they sell it in bags. I think that's legal. They don't sell cocaine, so again, not drug.
No, they don't.
Well, not off the shelf anyway. I don't know. They might be able to get you on the counter. I don't know, but sugar addiction, not a thing. To wrap that up. Awesome. Well, that's our 4 questions. I enjoyed that. It was a good one today. So obviously covered off sort of fat loss while stressed. Probably not a fantastic idea, but if you're able to do it, then more power to you. What's your training look like when gyms open? Probably the same as it did before they shut, but a little bit lighter. Nutrition for power production, 3 C's, carbs, creatine, caffeine.
Yep.
That's it. I had to really think about those then. We spoke about that a whole 5 minutes ago. So it's easy, yeah. And then sugar addiction, not a thing. So I feel like quite a well-rounded podcast. I reckon we get another one in, obviously, next week. We're going to keep these going anyway. It's not like a little flash in the pan. But next week might be interesting. We'll throw some questions out there for obviously when people are then back into gyms. I feel like that's going to be a really interesting kind of conversation around what that's going to look like. Obviously, we've covered off training and what that should look like, but I'll be interested to hear people, how they're getting on when they go back to the gym, what their plan is and such like that. And we can just kind of talk around things and keep it really informal like we have been.
Yeah.
I feel like we can get some really good questions in from next week. That should be fun. Here's a bit where we plug ourselves. So if you're not interested in using our services, you just want to listen to us talk rubbish on a podcast, probably tune off now.
Yeah.
If you want nutrition advice, don't come to me. I'm terrible at it. Go to Charlie. He's at CBNutrition_ on Instagram. You'll find all of his bits and pieces on there. Really knows his stuff and in the right lighting is a beautiful human being. So if you get a video call with him, that's you.
No, you are right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then me, like I said, don't come to me for nutrition. If you want training help and that kind of thing, programming and sort of advice,
come to me.
Probably come to me because that's my thing. So I'm at Night Strength or at Redbeard Barbell Club on Instagram, whichever you want to go to. And yeah, more than happy to help. So if you're looking to get back into the gym, you need a little bit of help with training or nutrition. With a little bit of luck, me and Charlie should be able to help. How's that?
I reckon so.
Awesome, man. I mean, we're quite good at what we do, I think.
I'm backing us, mate. You know what?
Say again?
I'm backing us. If someone came and was like, I need help with both these things, I think we probably could maybe do it a half-decent job.
We'd be all right, I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon we'd be all right. And that's all that matters. I think all right is better than shit, so...
All right's more than enough.
You know what I mean?
Like, reaching for better and just be content with all right. All right's fine.
If anybody fancies paying us compliments that we're definitely not fishing for into the comments section on YouTube, that'd be great. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to. But if you feel like rubbing our backs and blowing some smoke up our ass, then you're more than welcome. If you get something from these podcasts. But, you know, we should be all right at helping with these things. So training and nutrition, I reckon we'll be all right.
And searching for more than all right is a waste of time. We'll die in the end. Be content with average.
We are definitely better at helping you with training and nutrition than my accountant. They'd be terrible at training nutrition advice.
Yeah. No, and mine, actually, yeah.
So there's a thing. There's a scale. We can work from that.
Does that make us above average, then, if they're the average person?
Oh, definitely above average. We're like elite.
Oh, wow.
Smashed it. We've gone from all right to Olympic standard now. Smashed it.
Text mum.
Excellent. Mum, I made it better than my accountant at nutrition. Amazing. I mean, in fairness, I'm probably not better than my accountant at nutrition. Definitely training, but nutrition, I am very much still learning. So there's a thing. Anyway, that's enough waffle. We've gone through our half an hour, which is grand. As per usual, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to obviously more questions and catching up again.
Same.
Awesome, man. Cool. Speak to you soon. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye.